Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today I'm talking about this Underworld project called Drift. So, Underworld, it's been a minute since I've talked about these guys. I should hope most people who watch the channel know who Carl Hyde and Rick Smith are, but if you don't, they're 90s rave and techno legends who got big off their track Born Slippy Nux, and have continued to put out quality material from albums like Dub No Bass with My Headman, Second Toughest in the Infants, Bocoup Fish, and 100 Days Off. My opinions on those albums have admittedly drifted a bit in the past couple of years. Like, I used to consider Second Toughest my favorite, but now it's probably Bocoup Fish. The latter just being a slightly more consistent and interesting project all around for me, even if the former starts out a lot better. And 100 Days Off has kept me coming back in a lot more frequently than I would have expected, mainly because of the track 2 Months Off, which has kinda grown to become one of my favorite dance tracks of all time. But, you know, I digress. So a few years ago, they released a comeback album of sorts called Barbara, Barbara, We Face a Shining Future, which is still an absolute mouthful. I might have overrated it a bit at the time, since I was relatively new to their stuff and reviewing in general, but I still think that album is pretty good. It has a couple of moments that definitely feel fresh for them, but, you know, not incredible. Since then, they released an EP in collaboration with Iggy Pop called Tea Time Dub Encounters, which I thought was a pretty fun listen, but didn't have enough to say about for a full video. And Oliver from Deep Cuts probably said everything that needed to be said about that one. But this has been a very interesting time for Underworld, to say the very least, because of this ongoing project simply known as Drift. From what I understand, they've basically set themselves on a schedule to release a new track every Thursday on their website, usually in chunks lasting about a month and a half. Starting out back in this past November, another chunk going through January and February, and a third run that just finished, like, yesterday. I don't know whether this will culminate in an album or a compilation or something like that. Right now it appears that every 5 or so tracks they release gets compiled together in an EP as an episode of Drift. Episode 1 was called Dust, Episode 2 was called Atom, Episode 3 is called Heart, and I presume they're gonna keep on going from there. I was not sure how far they were going to go with this project when it first got going, but by the time they released a 47-minute track and just went on as if it were nothing, I got the feeling this is likely to be the kind of project that might be too big to review if I wait too long on it. If they release further episodes, I may cover those too, but I think covering them in chunks like the way I'm doing it right now might be the best way to go for now. Maybe every 3 episodes. And then, like, if they end at 7 or 10, then I'll just have a one-off. I'll admit this isn't exactly a super deep dive into all of these. I've only listened to them a couple of times each over the past couple of days. But to be fair, Underworld aren't really the kind of band I really felt needed that kind of analysis. They've never been a particularly deep band. They're just fun. And I went into this project hoping to have a fun time. Basically something low stakes for me to talk about while I sit on this new Amon Tobin album, deciding how I actually feel about it. So let's get into what I thought about the first 3 episodes of Drift, starting out with episode 1, Dust. Okay, so the way this thing starts with Universe of Can When Back was kinda cool, with its stripped back techno beats and ramblings about cars. The whole thing has a really nice build-up, but I don't know if it's as amazing an opener as you could have picked, cause, like, Carl Hyde sounds half asleep in the first couple of minutes. It was the kind of thing where I was like, is this really how you're starting such a big project like this? Even though it was like the 4th track they released, but, you know, they still started the EP with it. But okay, it picked up a lot more with 2 more energetic tracks in Dexters Chalk, featuring O-Phase, or however you say that, and Another Silent Way, the latter being the actual first installment in the Drift series, and would have been a much better place to start this EP. Just super hard hitting and with all this old school acid house squirting with Hyde's seesaw hook, adding that little bit of personality that I always look to them for. It's a ton of fun. This is the kind of stuff I became an Underworld fan for. Dexter's Chalk is totally in the same mold, kinda starting with Hyde's hell-related rambling, building up the sense of menace, but building up into something really awesome and headbang-worthy. If I have any issues with them, is that they're too short. If they stretched on for another 3 minutes or so, you got some classic Underworld there. But, you know, the remaining 2 tracks were not their usual techno fare at all, but still pretty enjoyable for what they were. Low Between Zebras was an ambient piece with a spoken word poem from Matthew Trevanian, basically musing on the word drift. It was pretty interesting. It didn't overstay its welcome either, though it felt more like an interlude than a proper track, with it being like 2-3 minutes, basically. And the 10-minute closer, A Very Silent Way, featuring the Nex, was one I was admittedly kind of hoping for more out of. Kind of this more abstract and jazzy piece with repetitive plucked bass lines and clinking cymbals and various other strange percussion textures, while some pitched-down voice wonders, what was it like in Japan? It's kind of slow and lumbering and doesn't ever feel like it goes anywhere. It's pretty repetitive, and it felt like it was building up to something that never actually came. And I know that all of Underworld stuff is repetitive, it's far from a new criticism, but I don't know, it was a track that just kind of felt like it was leaving me hanging. But, you know, I guess I can enjoy it on, like, you know, a Spanish Castles in Space level, I suppose. It's still not bad at all. So, episode 1 is pretty cool. Maybe not the best if I've ever heard for them. There are some definite keeper moments. I kind of wish I could be more enthusiastic about it on the whole. Nothing truly blew me away, but I'm at least glad I sat down with it. If anything, I wish it was longer. Like, it's over in half an hour, and I was left hungering for more. But whatever, probably feeling, I don't know, 6.7 out of 10 on it. Possibly solid 7 if you actually put it in release order, but I don't know. Moving on to episode 2, Adam. This was one I was most looking forward to, and also the one that I was most worried about. Mainly because of a certain elephant in the room track that ends it, but I gotta say, I think Adam is probably good enough to be a mainline Underworld album. It's certainly long enough, got a lot more tracks that stretch on longer than those on, say, Barbara. But yeah, the 6 tracks on here are really dang solid, and I enjoyed the hell out of this. Hell, I think I got a lot more out of this than I did out of that last album. Going down track by track, Appleshine is another oddly subtle beginning to this project, but it's still one that had me pulled in. A really solid, melodic ambient techno number that has its groove nailed down. Molehill was weird. It kind of has the feel of some kind of like 60s psychedelic ballad with no drums and some synth harpsichord or guitar with layers upon layers of hides humming and later straight crooning. By the end it almost sounds like Bibio or something. I suppose it's not completely out of character. I seem to recall moments of Oblivion with Bells maybe sounding somewhere in that mold, but never mind. But in spite of the strangeness of it, it does sound really good, and it's nice to break up the project with some variety. Threat of Rain was the one I was most looking forward to, though, it being a 15-minute minimal techno piece, and it did not disappoint. Hyde's sarcastically dismal, I'm good, I'm alright. Hook did stick in the head, and he's eventually ditched in favor of a storm of impressively strange electronic effects that are a ton of fun to listen to. Brussels wasn't that interesting, but it did hit hard. Those kick drums are super nice, and I will admit the art of conversation is a memorable enough hook to work. It's probably the worst song on this part. Still pretty good, though. Soniamode popped out a lot more to me, though. Hyde's vocals were a lot more impassioned, and the lyrics were a lot sillier. Like, at one point he just goes, shampoo! Well, there was all these colossal buzzing bass synths that are whirring behind him. This thing absolutely bangs. Definitely could have gone on longer. It's only like 3 minutes, but I guess if I can maybe see it getting kind of annoying if it went on too long. Maybe 5-6 minutes max, but you know, it had the potential to be something like Bruce Lee. Whatever. But let's finally get into the elephant in the room that is the 47-minute closer, Appleshine Continuum. I'll admit, I didn't go into this track expecting much out of it. Figured it'd be a singular ambient piece that just focused on the atmosphere showcased on the original Appleshine. The kind of thing that I'd probably just tune out or get bored of really quickly. Underworld don't usually have a problem with doing long songs, like, for instance, Juanita, Kiteless to Dream of Love is still amazing, but that's just 16 minutes, and cut up into 3 not really distinct parts. 47 minutes of just a singular track was going to be patience testing, to say the least. And this was also a collaboration with the Nex, and given how I was kind of underwhelmed by A Very Silent Way, I wasn't really going into this 47-minute track with soaring expectations. Could very easily not justify itself. But wow, was I proved wrong! As it turns out, Appleshine Continuum is basically their take on something like Manuel Gosling's E2, E4. Like Rick Smith is providing the core groove to bob your head along to. It starts out sounding just like the opener, if even a bit more energetic than the way that one started. But the various members of the next slowly get introduced and chime in with extended solos on Hammond organ and piano and the plucked bass again, and it's all structured in such a way that it never gets boring, and no element ever gets stale. Not to mention the last 10 minutes or so just shows the entire groove melting away into the next free-form jazz abstraction, just letting them harmonize with each other with no beat, just pure piano and cello and whatever else. It's absolutely beautiful and really closes this thing out on an emotional high note. This piece wasn't just way better than I expected, it's the best track in the series so far. It is one hell of an accomplishment, and I don't know how they're gonna top it. So yes, as it turns out, Adam is actually freaking great and could pass as a mainline Underworld album in its own right. I'm feeling a solid 8 out of 10 on it. And that leaves episode 3, Heart. I think Heart was fine. About equally as enthusiastic about Heart as I was for Dust. But there's no tracks on here that I was like, oh, I wanted more of it. Nor were there tracks that I felt like, oh, this overstayed its welcome. But there's no tracks that I thought were better than just good. I don't think it has any of the best moments in the series yet. Like, it opens with Dune. It's this kind of slow burn crooner with spoken word passages. I see a lot of comparisons with Solar System from 100 Days Off, but this just isn't as good for me. Like, there's some nice harmonies in the beginning, and again, I don't get sick of it, I don't feel like it's too long, but I don't know, it just didn't leave a strong an impression on me. Custard's Speedtalk is one of the better moments on here, though, as it creates this kind of breezy and heartfelt groove with its brisk drum textures and pianos and squirting synths. It sounds really nice. Like it should be the ending to this episode. I mean, the lyrics aren't that great. Like, Hyde goes on this I can treat you better than he can shtick at one point that kind of distracted me, but it's not like I go to Underworld for lyrics in the first place. The sound of the track makes up for it. Speaking of dumb lyrics, This Must Be Drum Street shows Hyde constantly asking me if I want to buy his car. I think I'm good, thanks. Okay, but never mind that. This track has this kind of 80s groove to it with a bit of a Giorgio-influenced bass line. It provides a kind of old-school charm. It's one of the better moments. Then there's Pine Tum, a track that was my favorite on the episode on first listen, and then cooled on me with repeat listens. It kind of comes off to me as a less memorable attempt at something in the same minimal techno vein as Thread of Rain. I do like the change up in the last couple of minutes and into that more percussive sound. It still delivers on the same kind of fun and danceable appeal that you'd want out of a track like this, but it completely disappears from my head once it's done, save for maybe Hyde's drawn out the best place hook. Not bad, but Thread of Rain was better. Finally, Poet Cat is the shortest moment on here, and interestingly enough, also probably my favorite. It's the one I most consistently enjoyed, at least. It's kind of this slow, strutting jazz track that feels a little Larry Heard-esque, with really nice violin and saxophone solos that really carry this thing and make it enjoyable. It's a subtle track and not one that plays to Underworld's strengths much at all, but a good one all the same. Still, though, I can't really say that I'd call it great, and I don't know if it's as good as the best moments from the previous 2 volumes. That's kind of the problem with Heart for me. Like, it's all good, but none of it is great. I kind of came out of Heart ambivalent on it, despite not really having much of negative to say on it. But, you know, I still think it's worth checking out. It's probably my least favorite of the 3 episodes so far, if by a tiny amount, maybe like a 6.5 out of 10, but, you know, there's still some good stuff here. So that's my thoughts on Drift so far. It's a little hit and miss, as I kinda expected given the amount of content being released, but so far I'm enjoying this whole project, and there's been a lot of good stuff to come out of it. I believe the next episode will be starting at the end of this month, so I'm looking forward to that. I'll keep you posted on this after they release a couple more episodes. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. Shout out to my Patreon supporters. They're awesome people. If you want to add yourself to that list or make me a review of something, link to my Patreon is in the description. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.